Welcome to another episode of the Business Spotlight. I am joined today by our guest, Aryk Grosz. He is the founder of Tribefy and also the business owner of Mixbook. Aryk, thank you, number one, for taking the time to be on this episode of the Business Spotlight. I am your host, Edgar Rodriguez with Action Coach. Without further ado, Aryk, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your current business journey?
Yeah, so I was born in New York City on the East Coast, and then I grew up on the West Coast, and I went to UC Berkeley, studied engineering, started a company when I was 21 called Mixbook. Grew that with my co-founder until about 2020, basically, around the time when COVID hit, and then I started working on my next startup, which is a location-based social networking app
Nice.
called Trustpilot.
Yeah. So, in that's amazing, right? Like learning from one business and now, starting another journey. And that's the point of the business spotlight, right? Is to highlight, people who are on that journey of entrepreneurship or they're thinking about getting into entrepreneurship. So what are some of the insights you could share, from your first business going into the second business as far as, what inspired you to start that business journey?
Um, well, I think a lot of people are entrepreneurial in general. Like they always kind of want to create things or they want to do things.
Hmm.
And entrepreneurs can kind of manifest themselves in different ways. There's something called entrepreneuring, which
Hmm.
is when you try to take entrepreneurial concepts into your large company or into your corporate company
Right.
and build things within it. And that also, for me, it's we put labels on things, but really, I think entrepreneurs essentially are willing to trade extra time to really build something amazing and not settle for less.
Yeah, 100% is we all have it within us, right? It's just taking that leap of faith of knowing that it's a risk, but what's the reward like in getting into entrepreneurship?
Mhm.
Question I have for you, Aryk, is how do you stay motivated and focused on the goals that you guys currently have?
Yeah, well, and that's why I think picking whatever you work on is very important. Like you have to be
Hmm.
very passionate about it because it's hard. It's really hard. Um, and that's the beautiful thing is like even when you have good days and bad days, you can always kind of look back at what you're trying to do, and you can get strength from that.
Hmm.
And the journey is obviously important, but entrepreneurs are very goal oriented as well. Like we're trying to get somewhere too, so it's important to appreciate the current journey you're on, and but then also have that goals for yourself.
Yeah, 100% is knowing that the type of impact that, whatever product or service that you provide and the impact it's going to have on somebody else, right?
Mhm.
For example, like right now with Tribefy, it's knowing that you're connecting people to the app, right?
Yep.
In knowing that not only is it here locally, but your app is globally,
Yep.
and it's been helping people get through certain situations and being able to connect and inspire, which is
Yep.
amazing, right? And knowing that that's the impact that you're having. When you first started this app, right? What did you envision to what it's evolved to now?
Yeah. I mean, I guess when I started, I really saw it as a tool to connect people locally, and it's something that I feel like everybody is missing on their phone. We look at our phones and we're like, oh, maps, I'll go to Google Maps. Oh, I want to check out the movies. I go to Flickster. I want to see restaurants. I go to Yelp. But
Hmm.
then there's no real app that's like for local community per se. Like anywhere you are in the world, you can just press this app and you have your local community
Hmm.
immediately. Like which app is that? And no, there's no clear winner in that space. It's very fragmented, and I feel like I have some interesting ideas on how to go about doing that. So I have a very clear vision of where I want to go, and that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, that's amazing because I know I've used it myself, and I stumbled upon it a while back ago,
Yeah,
and it was
just
just through
early
through the
days.
community. Yeah, 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 and how helpful it's been because I've been able to connect with some really interesting people just in our own local community.
Yeah.
But like with what I do, I travel across the country quite often
Mhm.
to meet with other clients, and by going through that journey and just having that app and seeing other people being able to use it has been extremely helpful.
Yeah.
What advice, Aryk, would you give 20-year-old Aryk who's just getting into business?
Mhm. That's a tough one. I think,
Hmm.
you always kind of want what you don't have. So, I've pretty much seen this across the board with everybody. It's like people who are super successful and super famous, which they wish they weren't famous anymore. People who are not famous, wish they were famous. Um, and I think ultimately, take care of yourself. I think health is really important, even at a young age. That's something that, I started kind of like in my mid 20s when I was already on working at Mixbook. But I wish I would have started earlier and been more aware of it. Um, and, I think health is probably one of the most important things because building a company takes a long time and it's very draining.
Hmm.
Like you need the energy, you need to like clock in on days where you're like really sick potentially because your business might fall apart if you don't. So, ultimately like you have to be in a good shape to be an entrepreneur in some ways.
Hmm.
Actually, if you're going to be a solo founder, if you're a sole, you have your own business, even if it's a brick and mortar place, I'm sure people who've had that experience have had similar experiences there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And those are really good points, right? Like that's very valuable is knowing that you have to maintain not only your good health, but your mental health too, right?
Yeah.
Because it can be a grind. And that's one of the things I hear is like I feel like I'm spinning my wheels. I feel like, I'm losing track of time. And that has to do a lot with health, right? Like if you physically take care of yourself, you're consciously aware of like, okay, I need to focus. I need to make sure that mentally I'm checking in, and not only in the business, but on the business and being able to enjoy and embrace that journey that we're on.
Yep.
What do you feel, Aryk, is one of the biggest mistakes first time entrepreneurs make?
Um, I think the probably one of the biggest mistakes is not having a clear plan to get to your
Mm.
first milestone. So there's a lot of ways to get to that place, but you need to be kind of cognizant like, will you need to raise money? Will you not need to raise money? If you do need to raise money, what do you need to show in order to get there? And do you have the resources that you need to get to that point? Like, what is that next? Because every business doesn't just go from like zero to infinity, it kind of goes on steps, right? And it
Hmm.
makes the first thing. And you know, for small businesses, sometimes people can kind of do it on their own. They say, okay, I'm gonna go and get the first 10 clients myself, right? And then the next 100, you're gonna hire somebody, and that's fine. Um, but you have to have a plan to do that because what ends up happening is you start grinding it out for a while and you realize that that you can't make it to that next rung on the ladder, so to speak. And so
Hmm.
I think that's a really important piece that you have to be careful about. So maybe that's getting a co-founder, maybe that's raising capital, maybe that's saving them enough money. You always want to budget for 2x the amount of time because it usually takes twice as long than you think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's really good information, right? Like knowing that you have to have a plan. What does that game plan look like? And then breaking that game plan down into digestible steps
Yep.
and then celebrating those little wins and implementing opportunity for error, right? And what I mean by error is those are opportunities for growth, right? If we make
Yeah.
mistakes, how do we learn from that so we don't repeat those mistakes?
Yep.
And keeping that a track of that plan is extremely helpful,
Yep.
and really, really good advice.
Yeah.
So, how would you say, Aryk, how do you manage your time effectively and efficiently?
Yeah. That's a great question. Well, for starters, I try to get things in my life that are very like routine
Hmm.
into routines. If that makes sense. So it's everything from like grocery shopping to working out. Like I have a certain program that I follow. I don't have to think about like what my next workout is. I already know when I'm doing it and what it
Right.
is. It's already on my calendar. And so I think that allows me to focus on other things and also keeps me healthy and stuff to be able to work longer hours. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that's good. And right, like having that default calendar and prioritizing your time, right? Whether it's setting up the time to work out, setting up the time, hey, these are the tasks I need to get done, these are the priorities I need to get done. So,
yeah,
and that's good advice because I've worked with quite a bit of business owners and entrepreneurs, right, that can't manage their time. And the one thing I tell them is you can't control time, but time can be managed. And
Right.
that's setting up those blocks and times of what are the tasks that need to get done? What are your goals and how are you tackling those goals, right? Did they get done, yes or no?
Yeah.
And just holding them accountable, right? And that's the point of us, having that conversation with them and in their journey is what is priority and how are you tackling?
Mhm.
What's your vision, Aryk, for Tribefy now with what the direction that it's shifting to?
Yeah. So I mean, the vision has always kind of been similar, which is it's always meant to be a location-based app. That was the real kind of hole in the market that I saw.
Hmm.
Um, Tons of social media that connects us around the world, and sharing content around the world happens in nanoseconds, but we still don't know like what's happening around us. And as we travel more and as we lock ourselves in our room from home all the time, this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem.
Right.
So, my goal is ultimately to connect, everybody. And for me, it's really about how do I speed up that vision
Yeah.
and do it in a shorter time. So that's
Yeah.
that's the bigger thing for me right now, where I'm focusing most of my effort.
Good. And then, yeah, I mean, that's really good. Is like you at least have a game plan of how to focus those efforts and knowing that it's evolved over time because, like you said, it was meant to be a location-based app, but that thing's taken off, like fire.
Yeah.
Now that we're getting out of COVID, we're pretty much at the tail end of it, right? On this journey of entrepreneurship, Aryk, what have you personally learned about yourself?
Um, well, that's I would say from the last 20 years.
Hmm.
Um, it's I think what you learn is that you can do a lot more than you think if you put your mind to it.
Hmm.
People like, especially when I was younger, it's like, oh, all these people have way more experience, but ultimately, like, you always have some advantage, and you want to figure out how to take advantage of your advantages,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you think
whatever
about it,
those
right?
are. And I think those are the most important things. And whenever you start a company too, all people always look for like, what's your unfair advantage in this space,
Mm,
right? Are you well connected? Are you a programmer? Have you kind of been in this industry for a while? And if you look at a lot of successful entrepreneurs, they all have some kind of unfair advantage, um, that allows them to succeed in that specific business.
yeah, yeah, yeah. If you think about it, right, over the last 20 years, most businesses have a blueprint,
Mhm.
right? So it's knowing, okay, what are some of the learnings we can adopt from what has already been done, right? And how do we adapt some of those into what we're currently working on?
Mhm.
So so that's really, really good advice. What's the best way for people to connect with you if they're looking to get a hold of you?
Yeah.
That.
Well, you can download Tribefy and look me up by my name, Aryk, or you can just Google me. I'm really easy to find, Mixbook founder or Tribefy founder, and you'll find me. On my LinkedIn is also another easy way to connect with me, as
Oh,
well.
great, great. And now that we're coming to the end of the business spotlight, Aryk, what's one question that I didn't ask that you wish I did
Oh, now you're really stumping me. Prepared for that. Um, yeah, I don't know. Nothing
ask?
came.
Yep, I like to leave this one open just in case there was something that you wanted to share with what you're currently working on, or what are you most excited about as we're, approaching Q3 and 4 in 2023?
Um, Well, I mean, for me, it's really I'm just excited about what I'm working on,
Hmm.
and it's like the way you're working on the right thing is if you stop working on it today, do you imagine yourself thinking about doing it in the future?
Mm,
And that's a great way to know, like, okay, you're probably doing the right thing. Um, and if you look at people in sports, right, and things like that, if you're a professional tennis player, you can use the same rubric. You can say, well, if I stop playing tennis today, what would I want to be doing a year from now? Probably playing tennis. If you actually enjoyed it. And if you don't feel that way, maybe that's not your passion.
yeah,
So I feel like that's always a good way to look at things, especially like when things get hard. And you're wondering like, do I really want to build this business or whatever it is, or it's it really comes down to that, because that's where you get your strength from.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Well, Aryk, really, really good advice. I appreciate you being on this episode of the Business Spotlight, and I look forward to connecting with you.
But yeah, thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You too.